Salutation everyone, and welcome to this new Ruby and Blender tutorial. I'm on the 3.5 version and I'll show you how to make Neo Semblance Effect. I've already prepared a free object character. We have the first character, the character that will change. We have the second one. You can recognize the paper pleaser who looks like Neo, and a third one with the second character I duplicate. You can duplicate with Shift D. And let's work with the first character. First, we'll add an empty object here. You go to empty, you select a sphere, and you put the sphere so that it can have all the character in its center. And we'll change the name of this empty, and we call this empty character 1. And then click on the character. Here you can change and go to the geometry node editor, and you can click on new. And here you can change the name and put character 1 so that you can see here. So now that we are here on the geometry node, we will add 5 nodes. We will add a delete geometry. With this, we can delete the object with the empty, and here you can add an object info, and on object info here you can select empty character, and then we can add a position node here. We can add a vector maths node, and we change this to distance here, and we'll add finally a math node, single math node, and we change this to greater than. And now what we do, we put the delete geometry here. We want the position go to the first socket here, the location of the object info to go here, the value here goes to the first socket of the greater than, and the scale of the empty goes to the second socket here. And we can connect this to selection. So when the character is inside, it's on a single mesh, but if you move the empty, you can see the character disappear. If you want to do the opposite effect, you can change the greater than to less than, and it will be the opposite. It's when the empty is not on the mesh that the character is complete, and if it goes inside, it will disappear. But let's select the character 1 and change less than to greater than, because we'll do this effect to delete the character. If your character doesn't have enough subdivision, you can add here a subdivision mesh and plug in here. Be careful, adding more level will add more faces to your mesh. You can select the meshes here that we edit and press Ctrl plus J. And you can select this again and click to copy, because we'll copy this group 3 times. So now that we are done with the first character, we can hide it and hide the empty character and select the second character. And again, we'll add a new empty group. We'll put it on sphere. Let's put here the right side for the empty sphere, and we'll change the empty to empty character 2. Now let's select the character 2. Let's add a new geometry group. Let's call it character 2, and here you can paste the node we already selected. So what we'll do the same here. We'll put the group info to the delete geometry group, but here we'll change the empty character to empty character 2. And now, as we can see, when we select the empty character 2, we have the same effect. Now we have our first character and our second character that disappear when you use these empties. We'll do the same, but for the semblance character. You should always use the biggest character on your scene. The effect will be better when you do this. And for the first time, we'll add an empty sphere. But this time, this empty sphere will be different. We'll press S to scale, Z because we want to change the height of the sphere, and you can crunch it a little and you can put it here. So now let's select the semblance. Let's call it semblance. Let's go here to the empties. Let's select. Let's change the name and call it empty semblance. And now let's select the semblance mesh, and you know the music now. You can paste here the group we did, with the exception that now when you plug the geometry to the D geometry and D geometry to the group input geometry, here you have to change this to empty semblances so that it only takes account of this. And as you can see, the effect works. But here we can add the subdivide mesh and put this so that we have a better subdivision for this mesh. Now something to make it better look, we can add a transform geometry group. Since this won't be the mesh but will be the particle effect, we can slightly scale the X and Y axis. So let's put something like 1.2. You can also change here the size of the Z of the Y axis for something better. And now with this transformed geometry, we'll turn this geometry to a volume. So here you can add a mesh to volume node, and you can put the density to 10. And as you can see here, we have changed our meshes to a volume. And now we will distribute points in volume here. So now we have those points that take place of the volume, and here you can go with a high density. So as you can see, we have now those points when we move over empty group. Be careful, if you go to a render mode, you'll see nothing because those points doesn't have any mesh. So now that we have this, and you can group this with Ctrl G, we will add an instance on point here. So now every point will change with an object we'll add here in the instance. Since we want to have those particle effect, let's create quickly one. I'll show you how I do. So first you add here a plane. You can put here. Let's scale it a bit. Click Ctrl A to apply the scales. It's important because it can change how you'll see on the geometry nodes. And let's go to edit mode. You press tab. Let's select here an edge. Let's extrude with E to Z. Let's extrude again, but on the y-axis, something like that. We can also change little. You can choose whatever geometry you want. And to add more effect, you can select all the cube, press I one time and slightly change, so that we can change the color here on the edge on the side to a white effect, and we'll add the color here on the center. So for that, let's go to shading. On shading here, we'll add a new, we'll call that particle semblance for the name of this object. And we'll change the principal BSDF here to an emission. Here, you plug there. Also, never forget when we are in EV to put here a socket on blues so that you can see the effect. And here, since we'll have a lot of those particles, we will change the color. How can you change the color of every particle? It's easy. You add here a color ramp particle. You change their linear to a constant one. Then here you add an object info and you plug here the random socket to the fac. So every time the object will be different, it will have a different color. Okay, those are the colors that they use in the show, at least what I think are the good color. Here you can have the hex code, so you can put those number for 1, and here is the hex color for the pink one. But you can change to whatever color you like. It's up to you. And here on the stance you can put something bigger, like 1.8, but that's something you can change. And now we add the white bloom effect here. So you go to edit mode or you press tab on your keyboard. You select the face, and here on the edge you click on Alt plus left click, and you only click the edges of the mesh. You go to slot 1, you click here on add a material, you create a new material, and you can call it semblance particle white, for instance. And now on slot 2 you can assign. As you can see, it become white, but we want this to be an emission 2. So let's put here to emission, and let's put like 1.2. Okay, now that we have our particle effect, you can return here on your semblance. Here on the instance, well, you can add here, let's change the name, so semblance particle, for instance. So let's select our semblance. You can click and drag this directly here so that you can have the object info already with the semblance particle, or you add the object info node. Okay, and you can plug the geometry to instance. And as you can see, it's way bigger to what it should be. So let's add a transformed geometry. Plug this here, and now you can change the scale. The scale is up to you. You can choose whatever scale you want. Let's go for something like that. Don't forget, you can change the densities, you want more or less. As you can see, every particle is in the same direction, and it's not really cool. So let's add some randomness here. On the rotation, you can drag here and put a rotate Euler here. And you can change in here on the x-axis. You can see we change the particle to one direction, and here on the y-axis, choose one direction you want, because we'll add another random effect here on the particles. And how do we do that? You go here on the instance on point, and we'll play with the rotation and scale. So for that, we'll need 2 random value. You put random value to change the float to vector, since we need 2 vector. Duplicate those 2 and put 1 to the rotation and 1 to the scale. And we want the rotation to rotate a little more on the y-axis. Once again, you can choose orientation you want. And on the scale, we don't want to have a 0 value, because some particle will completely disappear or will be too small. So here on the minimum, I suggest you to go by 0.6. And if you can see, there are some that are bigger, some that are smaller. If it's not good, you can put even less. And as you can see, and we have nearly finished. As you can see, when now we change here when we move the empty semblance, we have this cool effect. So now that we have everything, we have our character, we have our empty, we need to put some hierarchy between the empty. So the empty one, the one for the first character is the most important and it should be at the top. The second one, the one that control the second character here, should be way back here. And the semblance with here should be between those two. Try to figure out where the semblance doesn't activate by the empty, and once you have that, you can click on the first empty character, you go here to the constraint property and you select child of. Now you select the empty semblance, which means it's the empty semblance that will control even the second empty group. And we will do the same for the empty character 2 object. So let's put it slightly better, but not so far. Let's add a constraint, child of. Click here, select. And now, if we've done completely, when we move this top, we should have the mesh then change. As you can see here, we still have the semblance effect, and if we put the empty to height, we won't have this select. So to remediate about that, it's simple. You select the empty character 2 and you just scale. Let's put it on a better position, and now when we move this, it works better. And there is this. You have complete your Neo Semblance effect. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you like it, you can give a like. You can subscribe to this channel if you want to see more of those tutorial or even some animation. And you can show me your semblance effect and your character on my Twitter. I'll be very happy to see the result of your work. Thanks for watching. See you soon.